Like both have.
So I have just a couple pieces, one short poem and one short story. I started these before residency, but most of the work was done here, so they're still a little bit rough, but the poem is called Spores. As you pour yourself into a mold, mushrooms grow on your skin. Little black-capped and red-capped and orange-gilled sprigs, like the product of your pain, a backlash, a recoil. Your gun is smoking spores, burning in your tight grasp and waterlogged palms. They rise and sink by the millions into mildewy solitude, your countless layers of clothes. Mushrooms grow better on your skin. You, who fears falling asleep, who fears falling, who treats witch's butter with insomnia and facades with care. Mushrooms fill your lungs as your mouth speaks in spores, and you wish the telltale signs could be covered in the way that mushrooms cover. You hide under a cap and sleepwalk with the dead until finally you convince yourself that you are dead too. Your fungi grows wildly on the dead and the rotten, and it also grows wildly on you. And then this is my short piece of fiction called Charlie is Dead. Sorry, it's kind of slow. Charlie is dead. It was all over the news when they found him. They pulled his body from the shores of Rowan Bay last year. Most people said he drowned himself. Others said he was murdered. But regardless of who's right, everyone agreed it was a tragedy, and the whole town gathered to offer their condolences to our family. But then we moved on with our lives and forgot about him, and we all lived happily ever after. At least, that's the story I made up for myself. In reality, Charlie didn't die where anyone could see him. He died silently, secretly, to the point where some people still think he's alive. Even our own parents won't accept the truth. Charlie, will you do the dishes, please? My mother said one night after dinner. My sister Emily looked to me uncomfortably. I looked between her and our mother, who failed to notice her mistake. Both our parents are still so attached to their image of a son that they often envision his presence like that of a ghost. They don't see me. They especially don't see her. They only see Charlie. Mom, I'm Emily said. But she said it before, and she'll say it again. It just doesn't sink in. Our parents are too busy grieving, too unwilling to let go. They forget Emily's name, use his and her similarities as an excuse, and wallow in her transparency. But they should know better. Charlie is dead. It's been a year since the news reached the town, our neighbors, our friends, but I had seen it coming from miles away. Charlie was always just barely in this world, slipping further and further out of reach with each passing year. I used to spend all of my time with him, as I was the only one who really trusted him. Sometimes we'd run all the way to the shore to get away from it all. Just a couple of boys hiding in the heat of summer to escape grown-up nagging. We'd stop at the end of a lone wooden dock and yell across the ocean, and his eyes would follow our words long after they disappeared over the edge of the world. That's where Emily and I held our service for Charlie, at the end of the dock at Rowan Bay. Our parents were so reluctant to believe he was gone that they did not join us. Emily and I stood as close to the water as we could bear, and we too yelled until our words disappeared. Emily yelled longer and louder than I ever heard. She had a fury and a fear in her heart that was dangerous to hold, so I let her yell at the ocean until her makeup ran and her voice dissipated, dry as the sandy shore. Charlie is dead, but sometimes it feels like Emily and I are the only ones who really know, like we're the only ones who really care. Mom still calls for him across the house and frowns at Emily when she answers instead. Dad asks her questions that have nothing to do with her and everything to do with Charlie. Neither of them trusts what she says. Neither of them acknowledges her. I think they hate Emily for what she did to him. They hate her for existing in his place, for standing where he stood. They write the name of a dead person on family photos and on cards. Sometimes they make her read it. Sometimes they make her say it. They force it into her mouth like soap against the curse word that is her. I write this in secret because I know I shouldn't speak of him. I know he wouldn't want to be remembered. I know he would have wanted to stay dead, stay gone, stay nothing but a faint memory, a boy who never truly existed, a boy who was never really here. I write this in secret because I want to vomit all these horrible words up. I want to stuff them in the folds of my brain, hide them in a used napkin, and discard them. Not in the way that Emily already has, not for catharsis or relief or a moment of exhalation. That right, that honor, is not mine. I just want to pass these lingering thoughts along, say it for the last time. Charlie is dead. Charlie is gone. Charlie never really existed. I wash my mouth out with soap because his name is a curse word and my mouth feels dirty. And I wish I could wash out the mouths of every person who's ever met him. I wish I had the strength to tell them to say it right. Say it. Emily, Emily, Emily. Emily is alive, and our parents would hate that. Emily is alive and she wants to be remembered. She wants to stay here, stay in our minds, stay everything she's supposed to be. A girl who has only just started to exist and yet was always right here in front of us. Emily is alive. It was all over the news when she was born. They pulled her body from the shores of Rhode Bay last year. Most people said she was an angel, a gift. Others said she was only human. But regardless of who was right, everyone agreed it was a miracle, and the whole town gathered to congratulate our family. But then we moved on with our lives and always remembered how joyful she was to be here alive. We respected the way she wanted to live happily ever after. At least that's the story I made up for myself. In reality, Emily was born where no one could see her. She was born silently, secretly, to the point where some people still believe she isn't real. Even our own parents won't accept the truth.